When I got on the train, the conductor suddenly leaned over and whispered, "Pretend you're feeling sick and get off the train, right now." I smiled. I thought it was a joke, but she grabbed my hand and begged, "Trust me, I'm begging you." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I carried the salad bowl through the doorway, and their whispering stopped, just like that. Hazel and Saul stood at the kitchen counter, frozen mid-conversation, wearing expressions I'd seen on students caught plagiarizing, guilty surprise masked quickly by false innocence. "Dinner's ready," I said, setting the bowl on the dining table. Hazel smiled too brightly. "Thanks, Dad. Smells wonderful." They followed me to the table, taking their usual seats. 3 days until our planned trip to Washington, and the air felt wrong, dense, like humidity before a thunderstorm. I passed the salad to Saul, watched him serve himself without meeting my eyes. We ate in silence for several minutes, fork scraping plate, ice settling in glasses. The grandfather clock in the hallway marked time with its steady tick. Hazel kept glancing at Saul, some unspoken communication passing between them. Saul poured himself a second glass of wine, then a third. His shoulders loosened. He leaned back in his chair, gestured with his fork. "Well, soon there'll be changes around here," he said, voice carrying that edge of wine-fueled confidence. "We'll finally be able to live like real people, not like—" "Saul!" Hazel's interruption came sharp as a slap. She forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Dad doesn't want to hear about your boring job hunt." I set down my fork carefully. "What changes are you talking about?" Saul's face went blank. He drank more wine. "Nothing, just possibilities. Opportunities." "Opportunities for what?" Hazel reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Her palm felt clammy. "Dad, you're imagining things. We're just excited about the trip." Saul finally looked at me. "Yeah, just, stressed about money stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." But 35 years of teaching history had trained me to read between lines, to spot the gaps in narratives students hoped I wouldn't notice. And this narrative had gaps wide enough to drive a truck through. I withdrew my hand gently, finished my meal, excused myself to the study. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Sleep had been thin, restless. I pulled on my robe and descended the stairs, moving quietly out of old habit. The house still held its nighttime hush. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard Hazel's voice drifting from the study. The door stood slightly ajar, golden light spilling across the hardwood floor. "Just 2 more days." Her voice was low, controlled. A pause. "Then everything changes forever." I froze, coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips. Another pause. She was on the phone. "No, he suspects nothing. It'll look completely natural." My heart hammered against my ribs. The rational part of my brain scrambled for innocent explanations. But the analytical part, the part that had dissected historical conspiracies and political machinations for decades, was already assembling darker possibilities. The study door opened wider. Hazel emerged, phone pressed to her chest, and nearly collided with me. "Dad!" Her eyes went wide. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." I kept my voice steady, curious but not accusatory. "Everything all right?" She recovered quickly, tucking the phone into her pocket. "I was just talking to Rebecca about a surprise we're planning, for you, on the trip." "A surprise?" "Nothing big, just something special." She touched my arm, smiled. "Don't worry about it." She moved past me toward the kitchen, leaving me standing in the hallway with cooling coffee and racing thoughts. Over the next 2 days, I watched, not obviously, not confrontationally. Just observed the way I'd taught students to observe primary sources, carefully, looking for patterns, noting inconsistencies. Saul and Hazel huddled over his laptop in the living room that afternoon. I walked in carrying my book, intending to read in my armchair. The laptop snapped shut so fast the sound echoed. "Just checking train schedules," Saul said. "We already have tickets." "Right, just confirming times." The next day I found them in the kitchen, bent over papers spread across the counter. When I entered, Hazel swept them into a folder. "Boring financial stuff," she said. "Anything I should know about?" "Just organizing some documents, trip planning." But their body language told different stories. The way they sat too close, whispering. How they sprang apart when I approached. The papers hastily shuffled. Screens quickly darkened. Each time, thin explanations about trip logistics or mundane household matters. I was a fool, or I was paranoid, or I was seeing exactly what my experience told me I was seeing. That final night before departure, I sat alone in my study. The 3 train tickets lay on my desk. Acela Express to Washington first class, departing 10:47 a.m. I'd paid for them myself, birthday gift to Hazel. She'd been so enthusiastic about a family trip. Quality time together. Quality time. I picked up the tickets, turned them over in my hands. I should cancel. Every instinct screamed warning. Something felt profoundly wrong with this entire situation. But running wouldn't give me answers. Confronting them directly would only make them defensive, drive whatever this was underground where I couldn't see it. I needed to know, needed to understand what was happening in my own house, with my own daughter, under my own roof. 35 years teaching students to analyze evidence and patterns. 35 years learning that when people act secretive, they have secrets. When they whisper and hide papers and shut laptops too quickly, they're concealing something they don't want you to know. I placed the tickets back on the desk. Tomorrow, I'd go on this trip. I'd create opportunities for real conversation, for clearing the air. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe stress and financial pressure had them acting strangely, and this trip would reset everything. Maybe. I packed my small travel bag methodically, each folded shirt, each rolled pair of socks, a deliberate exercise in convincing myself everything was normal, that I wasn't afraid, that I could trust my own daughter. I carried the bag downstairs and set it by the front door. The hallway was dim, lit only by the streetlight filtering through the window. The house was silent except for the clock and my breathing. From upstairs came muffled voices, Hazel and Saul talking behind their closed bedroom door. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. Couldn't make out words, just the rise and fall of conversation, urgent and low. I stood there for a long time, hand on the newel post, staring at my packed bag in the shadows. Tomorrow would bring answers. I just didn't know how terrible those answers would be. The morning light streamed through the high arched windows of 30th Street Station, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The grand concourse echoed with announcements and the roll of luggage wheels. Business people hurried past. Tourists consulted phones. Families dragged sleepy children toward their tracks. I walked slowly, my small bag in hand, watching Hazel and Saul 20 feet ahead. They moved with purpose, almost urgency, glancing back occasionally to make sure I was following. "We should hurry, Dad." Hazel checked her phone again, the 4th time since we'd entered the station. "The train boards in 15 minutes. "Yeah." Saul's voice was quiet, tense. "Don't want to miss it?" I caught up to them at the base of the escalator leading to the tracks. "We have plenty of time. What's the rush?" Hazel's smile didn't reach her eyes. Just excited, looking forward to the trip. But her hand gripped her phone too tightly. Saul's jaw was set in a way that suggested anything but vacation anticipation. That same dense feeling from dinner 3 nights ago pressed against my chest like a weight. We descended to the platform level. The Acela Express waited beside track 7, sleek and silver, humming with electric readiness. A handful of passengers were already boarding. Hazel and Saul climbed the steps first, tickets in hand, and disappeared into the train car. Through the windows, I watched them choose seats, settle in, place their bags in the overhead compartment. They moved with practiced coordination. I approached the steps, ticket ready. A conductor appeared in front of me. A woman in her 50s, wearing the standard uniform, her expression serious. She stepped close, closer than typical professional distance. "Sir," she said quietly, urgently, "pretend you're feeling ill and leave this train." I blinked. "Excuse me? I think you have me confused." Her hand gripped my arm. Her eyes were wide, frightened, not for herself, but for me. "Trust me, please." I heard them talking about an accident and inheritance. "Your life is in danger." Time seemed to slow. The station noise faded to a distant hum. My heart stopped, restarted, began hammering. I looked past her through the train door. Hazel and Saul sat together in facing seats, both staring at me. Not with concern, not with impatience, with something else entirely. Anticipation. Everything from the past 3 days crystallized in that instant. The overheard phone call. Everything changes forever. He suspects nothing. Completely natural. The whispered conversations. The nervous energy that wasn't excitement, but calculation. Saul's wine-loosened comment about changes in living like real people. My professor's mind, trained to assemble evidence into coherent narratives, completed the picture in seconds. They were planning to kill me, not hypothetically, not eventually, today. On this train, an accident that would look natural, yield an inheritance, solve their financial problems. My own daughter. The conductor, her name tag read Lillian, was watching me, waiting. Around us, passengers continued boarding. A voice over the intercom announced final call for the Acela Express to Washington. I had perhaps 30 seconds to decide. I clutched my chest, let my knees buckle slightly, grabbed the handrail for support. Help! Lillian's voice rang out across the platform. Medical assistance needed. Passengers turned, station staff appeared. Someone steadied me from behind. Lillian supported my other arm, her performance convincing because her concern was genuine. Hazel jumped from her seat, rushed to the train door. Dad! I waved her back, my voice deliberately weak. Go ahead, it's just stress. I'll catch the next train. Dad, we should stay. Saul appeared behind her. His hand gripped her shoulder, firm and controlling. He leaned close, said something I couldn't hear. His face was unreadable. The conductor, a different one, a young man, called out. Doors closing, all aboard. Hazel hesitated, torn between whatever script they'd planned and the unexpected deviation. Saul's hand tightened on her shoulder. He pulled her gently backward into the car. The doors slid shut. I stood on the platform, supported by Lillian and a station security officer. Through the window, I watched Saul guide Hazel back to their seats. She was talking rapidly, gesturing. He shook his head, said something brief. The train began to move, slowly at first, then gathering speed. The silver cars slid past, one after another. Windows full of passengers reading newspapers, checking phones, settling in for the journey south. The last car passed. The train curved away toward the tunnel, its sound fading, becoming nothing. The crowd dispersed. The security officer asked if I needed an ambulance. I assured him I was fine, just a moment of dizziness, probably didn't eat enough breakfast. He nodded, satisfied, and returned to his post. I was alone on the platform with Lillian. The silence felt enormous. Are you really all right, sir? Her voice was soft now, sad. My voice came out hollow. I need a minute. Thank you. You may have just saved my life. She nodded slowly. I've worked this line 20 years. I know the difference between trip planning and conspiracy. I'm sorry. How did you hear them? They were in the waiting area upstairs, thought they were alone. I was checking schedules nearby. They were specific about what would happen. Too specific. She paused. I almost didn't say anything, didn't want to believe what I was hearing. But I couldn't let you board, couldn't live with myself if... She didn't finish, didn't need to. Thank you, I said again. She squeezed my arm gently, then left me there, returning to her duties. I stood on the empty platform, my bag still in my hand. The distant rumble of the departed train faded into the ambient noise of the station above. Announcements, footsteps, the city's constant hum. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Hazel. Dad, are you okay? Call us. I stared at the screen. My hand was steady. Steadier than it should be after learning your daughter tried to murder you. The shock was wearing off. Beneath it, something colder was crystallizing, something analytical, strategic. They thought I was vulnerable, easy to eliminate. They thought I suspected nothing. They'd miscalculated. I pocketed the phone without responding and walked toward the escalator. My legs felt solid beneath me. My mind was already working, sorting through options, planning steps. First, get home without them knowing I know. Act confused, concerned, apologetic for ruining the trip. Maintain the facade. Second, find proof. Document everything. They'd been careless these past few days, confident in their deception. That carelessness would continue. Third, decide what comes next. The victim phase was over before it truly began. The strategist phase had begun. The taxi wound through Philadelphia streets, past brownstones and corner markets, morning traffic building. I sat in the back seat watching the city pass, my phone buzzing intermittently in my pocket. Hazel's texts. I didn't look. 20 minutes from 30th Street Station to Chestnut Hill. The driver pulled up to my house. Empty driveway, quiet street. I paid him, climbed out, stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the place I'd lived for 30 years. My daughter wanted me dead. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside. The silence was complete. They were somewhere south of Baltimore by now, speeding toward Washington, believing they'd failed but could try again. I set my bag down in the entryway, took a careful breath. The shock was fading. Something sharper was taking its place. Clarity. I went to my study, closed the door, sat at my desk, pulled out a notebook, the leather-bound one I used for research projects, opened to a blank page, forced myself to think like the historian I'd trained to be for 4 decades. Evidence, patterns, timeline. I began writing. 6 months ago, Hazel started mentioning money troubles frequently. 4 months ago, Saul began asking pointed questions about my will, my assets, my plans for the estate. 3 months ago, they suggested moving in temporarily to save on rent. 2 months ago, Saul brought home bank documents that needed signing, routine account updates, he said. I stopped writing. Bank documents. The file cabinet key was in my desk drawer. I retrieved it, crossed to the cabinet against the wall, unlocked it, found the folder labeled Insurance. There it was. Life insurance policy dated 5 weeks ago. Coverage amount, $500,000. Beneficiaries, Hazel Spencer and Saul Gardner. My signature at the bottom looked genuine because it was genuine. The bank documents. I'd signed without reading carefully, trusting my son-in-law. My hands didn't shake as I photographed every page with my phone. Clinical documentation. That's what this was now. I returned to my desk, picked up my phone, dialed the insurance company number printed on the policy. Guardian Life Insurance, how may I help you? Yes, hello? I kept my voice friendly, slightly confused. Just an elderly man seeking clarification. My name is Morris Spencer. I have a policy with you, and I'm trying to confirm some details. My memory isn't what it used to be. Of course, Mr. Spencer. Let me pull up your account. Keyboard sounds. Yes, I have it here. Policy activated March 15th. $500,000 in coverage. Beneficiaries listed as Hazel Spencer and Saul Gardner. Is there something you'd like to change? No, just wanted to confirm the details. The premium was paid in full? Yes, sir. Annual premium of $8,400 paid in full on activation date. I thanked her, hung up. Pulled up my bank statements on my computer. March 16th, Saul withdrew $8,400 from my account. Transaction note, home repairs. No repairs had been done. I made a second call. Washington General Hospital. Good morning, this is Washington General. Hello, I'm trying to locate my daughter. She was supposed to visit today, Hazel Gardner. I'm concerned because she's not answering her phone. Let me check our visitor logs. A pause. Yes, a Hazel Gardner did inquire at the information desk about 2 hours ago, asking about a patient named Morris Spencer. My breath caught. What did you tell her? We informed her no one by that name was admitted. She seemed relieved, actually. Then she left with a man who was with her. That's my daughter. She worries too much. Thank you for checking. I ended the call, set the phone down carefully on the desk. They'd gone to Washington expecting to identify my body. When they learned I wasn't there, they'd abandoned the trip, relieved the plan had failed, but already recalculating. I heard the front door open, voices in the entryway. They were back. I rose, arranged my face into something resembling pleasant surprise, and walked out of the study. Hazel dropped her bag when she saw me, rushed forward. Dad! I embraced her, felt her arms tight around me. For a moment, just a moment, I almost believed the concern was real. Then I looked over her shoulder at Saul, who stood watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. You're back, I smiled, patted Hazel's shoulder. I'm so sorry I ruined the trip. We were so worried. Her voice sounded genuine. Perhaps some part of her still was my daughter, buried under desperation and greed. Are you sure you're okay? The doctor said it was just stress. I released her, shook Saul's hand. His grip was firm, brief. We can try again next week. I promise I won't collapse this time. No rush. Saul's voice was carefully neutral. Your health comes first. They exchanged a glance. Quick, but I caught it. The look of conspirators recalculating strategy. I'll make some tea, Hazel said, heading to the kitchen. I retreated to my study, closed the door, stood with my back against it. They'd try again. Different method, same ending. The afternoon dragged past. Dinner was quiet, civil. I excused myself early, claimed fatigue, climbed the stairs to my bedroom, changed into pajamas, lay on top of the covers, fully alert. Below, I heard their voices, low, urgent. Couldn't make out words through the floor, but I didn't need to. I stared at the ceiling in darkness, my mind working through options. The police. What would I tell them? My daughter helped me sign an insurance policy, and now I think she wants to kill me based on a conductor's warning? They'd call it elder paranoia, suggest counseling, maybe even suggest I was experiencing cognitive decline. I needed proof, real, undeniable, documented proof. And then I needed something more than police involvement. I needed justice, my own kind. The voices downstairs finally went silent. I heard footsteps on the stairs, their bedroom door closing. The house settled into quiet. I rose, moved to my window, looked out at the dark street. A streetlight cast yellow across wet pavement. My reflection stared back from the glass. A 64-year-old man who'd just discovered his own daughter wanted him dead. But the face looking back wasn't defeated. It was focused. Tomorrow I'd begin. Not as a victim. As an investigator. The transformation from hunted to hunter started now. Morning light filtered through the kitchen window. I sat at the breakfast table with Hazel and Saul, eating toast, reading the newspaper. The picture of normalcy. Inside, my mind ran through a checklist. Audio recordings, written evidence, witnesses, concrete, undeniable documentation. History is written by those who document it best. Time to become a documentarian of my own near murder. That afternoon, while Hazel was at her office job and Saul was out meeting investors, translation, drinking at a bar, I drove to an electronics store on Walnut Street. The clerk was young, helpful. Looking for anything specific? Voice-activated recorder for lectures. I smiled like a confused elderly man. Simple to operate. My hands aren't what they used to be. He showed me 3 models. I chose the middle option. Small enough to hide, simple enough to use, good battery life, paid cash, no paper trail. Back home, I studied the living room. Hazel and Saul spent most evenings on the couch facing the fireplace. The bookshelf to the right of the fireplace held my old history texts, philosophy books, novels I'd collected over decades. I positioned the recorder behind a row of biographies, 3rd shelf from the bottom, tested the angle. The microphone faced the couch perfectly. That night, I activated it before heading upstairs, claimed fatigue again, settled into bed, and waited. 2 nights later, I retrieved the device while they were both out, brought it to my study, closed the door,